I just kind of felt like I was less in comparison to a woman who had given birth, that I had been so awesome and strong and powerful when I gave birth naturally in my first pregnancy and first labor and delivery, and at this time round I kind of lost some of that. Hey guys, welcome to another video. Now, just over a week ago, I posted a poll on my YouTube community tab talking about natural versus C-section, as well as whether a C-section is considered giving birth. I received several beautiful comments below this poll that I will be sharing with you in just a moment. First, I wanted to talk a little bit about my own personal experience when it comes to considering or not considering a C-section giving birth. Now, the main thing I think here is that my personal experience was an emergency C-section, so it wasn't planned in any way. I didn't have time to process before the fact. I had to process after the fact. So when I was in the hospital bed trying to get myself out of bed when I had basically had major abdominal surgery, I found myself, especially during those first few weeks after coming home from the hospital, I found myself correcting myself whenever I would say things like, oh, you know, when I gave birth to Iris, this, and this. And I would immediately correct myself by saying, oh, but well, technically she was removed from my body surgically, but well. So I would constantly just kind of correct myself. So it wasn't even necessarily other people correcting me or other people talking about my C-section as though I hadn't given birth. It was more so me feeling guilty and feeling robbed of my natural birth rather than other people around me actually making me feel guilty. So I think we are our greatest enemy when it comes to this as well. And on that base, I have to say, I think the number one thing that caused me to feel this way also was my expectations. Since my expectations had been of a natural birth, as unmedicated as possible, that I would go in and be out pretty much in the same day. So technically, if you have a really fast labor, you could literally be in and out within 6 hours. Like, how fast and awesome is that? And I was hoping that I would literally barely be missed by Angel, like just barely. But unfortunately, it didn't work out that way. I ended up with an emergency C-section and 3 days in hospital with a baby staying in hospital longer than that as well. Now, generally, I believe expectations are to blame for a lot of things. Considering my TTC journey, my expectations were super high in regards to those first couple of cycles especially. I wanted to see that positive pregnancy test, and because I had seen it so early the first time round, I thought that the same thing would happen this time round. It most definitely didn't, as you guys have seen, but my expectations were up there, and that meant that every negative pregnancy test I saw, I was just let down and hurt and upset, and all the negative feelings would just kind of wash over me and take over. And the same thing happened with my pregnancy. My expectations were in regards to my first pregnancy. Again, my second was very, very different to my first, so naturally I was really taken aback with how much worse it could actually get. Now, going back to my experience in regards to my C-section, I will say that I also really felt this feeling of being less of a mother or less of a woman. So I really felt like, I can't explain it exactly, I can't put it exactly in words, I don't know if you guys understand what I mean or if you feel something similar. I just kind of felt like I was less in comparison to a woman who had given birth, that I had been so awesome and strong and powerful when I gave birth naturally in my first pregnancy and first labor and delivery, and at this time round I kind of lost some of that, which in reality that wasn't true, because a C-section is major abdominal surgery. Recovery from that, plus looking after a baby, and in my case going back and forth between the hospital and home and having an older child as well, it is hard and you need a lot of strength and a lot of mental and emotional strength to get through that as well. So in hindsight, no, like I was strong and it did make me as powerful and just, yeah. But in that moment and those first few weeks, I definitely felt less for it. Now, when it came to C-sections and my general opinion of C-sections prior to having children, I feel that people who haven't had children, we tend to kind of, I don't know, you think you know certain things, but unless you've been through them, you don't really. And what I want to say with that, I'm not judging anyone, but I'm just trying to say that I, for example, judged my sister-in-law quite a bit because she had 3 C-sections. And I will be honest and say that I used to think that my sister-in-law did not try hard enough to have a natural birth, and that she just kind of followed what the doctor told her at the time, which was, oh, your baby's not coming out, it's your due date, so let's just get the baby out. And there's a lot of that going on. Generally, a lot of my family, friends, acquaintances in Greece did have similar issues where the doctor was just like, well, it's your due date, so we need to get the baby out. And there was no such thing as like 41 weeks or 41 and a half weeks at least, like maybe not 42 weeks, but you know, going over your due date was something that they just I've rarely heard. But despite my opinions before having my first, and despite the general judgment, I will admit judgment towards my sister-in-law, I will admit that her support after my C-section was immensely important to me. She made me feel like it was okay. Like it was absolutely perfectly fine that I had a C-section. She made me feel like I was doing brilliantly. I was super strong and just amazing. And that was very, very important to me. Now, I will say that there is a very thin line between supporting women to give birth naturally and kind of pressuring them into it. Here in Australia especially, I noticed that there's a lot of support towards mothers, new mums, second-time mums, it really doesn't matter, to have the baby natural. Midwives support their choices. You're told to plan a birth plan. You're given all these options, you know, like unmedicated or medicated. You don't need to have like a full-on medicated birth. You can just try things like gas and air, etc. There's a lot of support, and when a woman really wants a natural birth, that is really great. But there does come a point where the thin line is crossed and this support actually becomes pressure, and a pressure towards that, no, you have to have a natural birth because this is the best thing that you can possibly do for yourself and your baby. When in reality, sometimes a C-section, which yes, is major abdominal surgery, we have said that before and I will say it several more times, it is major abdominal surgery. It is definitely no small deal. It is definitely not natural in any way. It is someone cutting into your body, but it is a lifesaver. It saved my baby. It has saved lives. It has saved issues. There are so many issues in regards to a lot of pressure in not having a C-section. Now, I have had a story like this told to me recently. Unfortunately, I can't find the comment for some reason, but it was basically a mama who labored really, really hard for several hours. A C-section would have been literally ideal for her, considering she had several complications. The midwife simply did not want her to have a C-section, like they refused, despite all the signs indicating that a C-section would be way better for her. And after a very traumatic natural birth, honestly, why? That it just doesn't make sense. So coming to the comments that were left under the poll, I really, really wanted to read 3 of them to you because I feel like they are just exactly what I'm talking about. So this one, the username is SD. I don't know any other details. Again, these are all public comments left under the poll. No personal messages, etc. I would not share personal messages. I've had 1 unmedicated vaginal birth and 1 C-section. Vaginal birth is natural with or without pain medication. I've often heard unmedicated mistakenly referred to as natural, which is very true. C-sections are not natural. They are major abdominal surgery. Are they painful, harder to recover from, etc.? Yes. Something to be ashamed of? No. Natural? Still no. A child is exiting your womb either way, so both are giving birth. People get so competitive over how they did it, defensive of their decisions during the process, or even feel shame for needing instrumental assistance or a C-section. Conclusion, vaginal deliveries with or without instruments, episiotomies, epidurals are natural. C-sections, for whatever reason, cause, although life-saving in some instances, such as mine, are still no more natural than an appendectomy. Another comment that really speaks to exactly how I feel as well is a comment by username PC, and she says, I had a C-section with my son, and for some reason people correct me / it feels wrong to say I gave birth, as if I'm less of a mum than others because I didn't physically labor to deliver my child. It's really, really hard on new mums when hormones are going crazy, you have a new baby to look after, everything is changing. At the same time, you're already dealing with your own personal emotions and guilt in regards to a C-section, or generally however you gave birth if it didn't go the way you had planned or hoped for. And then you also have society kind of like adding this extra weight in the sense of, oh well, you didn't give birth because, you know, your child was surgically removed from your body, or if you haven't labored, then well, have you really had a baby? Like, have you really given birth? Do you really know what it feels like? It's really, really hard because there's this idea that unless you give birth naturally, if you give birth naturally, there's a crown or a prize or an award, and in reality there isn't, other than holding your baby, which is the result of any way of giving birth, really. A C-section or a natural delivery, really, the main thing is having your baby in your arms. And another comment that I received, and I really wanted to share with you guys on that note, is from Kristen Spilled? I probably butchered that, I'm so sorry. And she says, bringing your child into this world is giving birth, whether it is vaginally, medicated or unmedicated, or by C-section, under spinal, epidural, general anesthetic or local. Motherhood is all about making difficult choices for what is best for you and your baby. No one should feel superior or inferior based on how the baby was brought into the world. That is simply amazing. I couldn't have worded it any better than that. That was literally the best way to put it. That it doesn't matter Either way, as a mother, you're making decisions and choices that are for the best interest of your baby and yourself. And if a C-section is what is going to literally save your baby's life and your own life, of course you're going to do it. So really, it is giving birth. You have birthed your child into this world. You've brought your child into this world, and that is all that matters. And now a little side note, considering I had Angel in Greece and Iris here in Australia, I will say that in Greece there is a lot of push towards C-sections, funnily enough, and I think it has to do with probably a more financial aspect in all reality, because a doctor gets paid more for a C-section rather than a natural labor and delivery. But doctors do have a tendency of jumping on any possible reason for a woman to have a C-section. So for example, my sister-in-law had her first because her due date was just around the corner and baby was showing no signs of coming down or wanting to be born, so she had a C-section. Her second was literally coming down, ready to be born, and because there was a planned C-section, they literally stopped her from having natural labor so that she could go through with the C-section. Again, she was very young and trusted her doctor completely, so I am not judging her in any way. I will admit at times I did think, before having my own children, I did think that she should have pushed a bit more, but I do realize now that in that moment you are so vulnerable that really you're just going to trust the people you think want the best for you. Another person who was quite close to me, Angel's godmother, also has had 3 children via C-section, and again, she was very young when she had them. The doctor said, oh look, there seems to be something going on, not really sure what it is, let's just be safe and go with a C-section. And there was literally nothing wrong. And then automatically they say to you that the moment you've had 1 C-section, you have to have every consecutive pregnancy has to be a C-section, because you've had 1 C-section, you're done. No possibility of a VBAC. Now my sister-in-law did attempt a VBAC, as I said earlier, but the doctor, she had changed doctors by this time, and the doctor did not feel comfortable going through with it. So again, kind of based on the doctor, yeah, it's a little bit tricky. Again, these are my experiences in Greece, but I do feel that there's a lot of just C-section push in Greece. Whilst here in Australia, there's a lot of push for natural delivery, like natural, you have to give birth naturally and you have to breastfeed naturally and everything has to be done like in the way nature intended, because that's how women are more powerful and how babies thrive. And yeah, we'll be talking about breastfeeding in a whole other video and all of that. But as far as C-sections are concerned, I did feel guilty and I did feel really bad and less and correct myself, and I still do correct myself from time to time. I kind of catch myself doing it without really thinking about it, but really, if it wasn't for my emergency C-section, I would not have Iris, and that alone gives me the strength to know that it was the best thing for me. My C-section was the best thing that could happen to me at that given time, and that's why I got through it. That is why I'm perfectly fine with it right now. Now this kind of video with the poll and adding comments, I'm definitely going to do again. Hopefully I will be posting more polls and using those polls and your comments in next week's video as well as the following weeks, etc. So if you feel comfortable with having your comments shared in a video, feel free to check out my community tab here on YouTube and check out my polls, comment on them, give your answer as well, weigh in on what opinions, etc. are going around, and you may see your comment in a future video. So yeah. Thanks so much for watching, guys. I will see you in the next one. Bye.